This video is an overview to a curtain wall randomization / optimization workflow for Autodesk Revit. The sample files are attached in the linked blog post. You can download those to follow along to be able to create a generative design workflow that works with curtain walls within Revit. In our case, these sample files are in Revit 2022, and those are provided in a folder that looks like this. Within this folder, we have a start file, which just has a curtain wall within it, and a final file that has the end result that you can achieve with curtain walls in the design option. We also have the Dynamo file and the dependencies for generative design. So I'll show where to copy those files here in a second. Let's go ahead and open the final to see what our end result could be. All right, so if you were to run the Dynamo graph in Generative Design, you can get a result that looks something like this. So if we go to the front view, we can actually toggle through design options to see some of the results that we have from optimization workflows. So overall, the workflow does take this concept of modules and submodules to create a randomized curtain wall system for us to be able to evaluate. In the finished file, we do have 3 options pre-baked for you. So we'll go ahead and close that file. I'll click no, I don't want to save any of my changes. We will go ahead and take a look at the start file. So start staggered curtain wall.rvt. So within this file, once again, we have a basic just curtain wall that doesn't have any mullions or grids at this time, and it's just inside of our file. This curtain wall is important because it does have the level of detail that we want to get out of this workflow. So it is a fabrication level curtain wall system, and we'll see that as we start to look at the results within it. Let's go ahead and open up Dynamo to take a look at how this Dynamo graph works live within Dynamo. With Dynamo open, we'll go ahead and open that Dynamo file that is provided with the whole workflow. Once we open the file, we will notice that it is on the manual run mode. That's available in the bottom left corner of Dynamo. We can see that we have to press run to get this to give us any kind of results. We will also notice that the generative design tools have opened as well. These tools are available to us in newer versions of generative design for Revit to help us build our Dynamo graphs for them to work with generative design. This graph was built with generative design in mind, so it does have these tools open automatically at this time. If we go ahead and press run, we will see that we are getting a run completed with warnings. This is because we have no curtain wall selected at this time. These pink node groups are our inputs for generative design, so we do need to fulfill these for it to work. You can leave this blank just to use it in generative design, but we're going to go ahead and pick that curtain wall really quick. So we'll click select, pick the curtain wall, and then I can bring Dynamo back to full screen. With that selection fulfilled, the node's no longer yellow, and we can go ahead and click on run. Once we run the workflow, we can navigate to our background 3D preview by selecting the geometry icon and zoom out. We can see that we do have a solution pre-baked that's creating a few results for us, and it's color coding based on surface area. If we were to change any of these inputs, we will see that update accordingly when we run the workflow. We can see that we have 4 distinct modules in here with that center yellow band. Those are our 4 modules that repeat. And we can keep on running this workflow to verify what choices we have. So these are our built-in inputs. Once again, these are enabled as input with the is input option under the right-click menu of these nodes. Within this workflow, there's quite a bit of logic and it's labeled accordingly. I encourage you to check out Cesar's presentation on it that we linked in the blog post as well. But most of the logic's in here spelled out, and you should be able to break it down pretty easily. In essence, we take an outer portion of the curtain wall, divide it into submodules, and then we divide those submodules into even more submodules, I suppose. So all the green groups would be our logic. Those are the ones that we're using to figure out logic for this workflow. We have some grid lines that we're removing to create this randomization. And then we do have some of the visualization as well. So we have coloring surface by area. We generate a color range based on the surface area. We have the portion that creates Revit elements. It is important to note that we are using gate nodes to block the change to Revit until we're ready. So if we were to run this manually right now and want to make changes in Revit, we would just have to click open on all of these gate nodes. We won't do that right now because we do want to leave this to work with generative design. In addition to the logic and inputs, we do have a set of outputs. These are all pieces of data that we can use to curate our design, to aid us in the choices that we're making with generative design. So a criticism oftentimes with generative design is we're creating a whole lot of elements or solutions to choose from, and we need to be a little more picky with those. In this case, Cesar, who created this graph, for instance, was really great in providing us with a whole lot of outputs to choose from. And we'll see how those come into play in generative design here in a moment. Within the outputs, we do have a number of unique panels, which is a really good output to have. So if you're trying to optimize for different panels you need fabricated, you can minimize that. We can minimize the width, the height, the max panel area, or the height to width ratio. So if we want that to be a more square panel, we can optimize for that as well. So that's what's really nice with this workflow. So that's the Dynamo graph in a nutshell. We will see that we have this update study type option saved down here, and we do have some of the other typical items with generative design. It already has a good thumbnail and a good description, so we'll leave that alone. And we'll actually end up just using the graph as is. So let's go ahead and close this Dynamo graph. I'll click no for now. In my case, I have this facade configurator file on a network drive. At this time, generative design does not work on a network drive, and I just tend to like to save these things locally anyway. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we're going to copy the Dynamo graph and the dependencies folder directly to the folder that comes with generative design for Revit. So I'm copying the .dyn file and the dependencies file. And once again, that location's in your documents folder, AEC generative design. If you're using a local path, you can map to that as well within generative design, but I tend to like to use the one that just comes with the out of the box. So we'll just paste this in and we'll have all of our dependencies and our Dynamo graph come through. All right, with that change made, we can minimize these folders and we'll go ahead and go to the Manage tab, Generative Design panel, and the Create Study button. Within Create Study, once the window's open, we will see that we have access to all the folders that we've mapped. So I have a few in here. You probably just have Autodesk samples and AEC Generative Design. If you needed to add another one, you can click on Add Folder and navigate to whatever folder you have saved with Generative Design workflows. In our case, we did copy the Staggered curtain wall workflow, so we're going to go ahead and click on this to be able to activate it. In our case, we need to select a wall still. So the Select Model Element node wants us to select a curtain wall. So we can click on Select, pick our curtain wall, and that input's fulfilled. We will see that we have the curtain wall selected in Revit, and it is selected within Generative Design in our Define Study dialog. In our case, we want to do a randomization. We can optimize this workflow, but we will get fewer results that way. So we're going to do a randomize. With randomize selected, we will let it create 40 solutions. We will let it iterate through the number of modules. Seeds in generative design are like design options in a way. They let us pick a number to generate a result that's random. So we can iterate through those and also recall results based on those seeds. So we will let that iterate through the seeds for us. I like these settings, so I'm going to click on the 3 dots and do Save Default Settings. That way it remembers all these selections for me for future runs. Once we have those settings selected, we'll go ahead and click on Generate. Generative Design will start running. It's firing up several Dynamo instances in the background to solve these solutions for us. So we'll just go ahead and let this run, and then we'll take a look at the options available to us. Once it's complete, it will have a series of results available to us. So we can maximize this a little bit for this part, just to preview all of our results. And you can go through, select results, and orbit around in this viewer just to preview that result as well. One really great thing with this specific workflow is the fact that we have this great color coding within this 3D window. So we can go through and find the option that we like. Scrolling through all of these, depending on how many you create, can take a while. So this is where we get into filtering these results. So if I were working on a project and I was creating a whole lot of results with generative design, I might want to optimize for the least amount of unique panels. In this case, inside of our parallel coordinates chart, which is at the bottom of the generative design window, we can actually filter these down. Perhaps 3 or 4 unique panels is okay with me. I can drag my mouse over 3 and 4, and that will start to reveal results that only have 3 or 4 panels to me. This is really great because I can be a little more picky with what I'm working on. If I also want the panels to be fairly square, I can pick a lower height to width ratio. That way we have something that's a little more square. If I need to clear that selection, if I didn't like that filter, I can just click on the coordinates chart right on that little gray area that appears, and it will reset that filter for that column. If I know that I want my panels to be a maximum of 4 feet high, this file is in imperial units, I can filter down to that. And if I knew I wanted it to be really close to 4 feet wide, I can filter down to that. As you start to filter, you will have far less results, so we'll go ahead and clear those last 2 filters. We also have another one in here for the total number of panels. So if I know I want a really high amount of panels, I can do that. So if I filter towards this top part, given the 4 unique panels constraint, I can see that this would be the option with the highest number of panels based on 4 unique panels. I actually like this one, so let's go ahead and tile this down a bit. Oftentimes when I'm working in generative design in Revit, I will collapse this sidebar. So we'll collapse the studies list just to have a little more real estate for the layouts. So within Revit, we do have this wall here in our view, and I do have my Explore Outcomes window open as well. If you click between Revit and Generative Design, sometimes a window will go behind Revit, so you can find it on your taskbar by just looking in your taskbar on Windows and selecting it. One feature that we're really excited about is the option to store these objects in design options. So let's go through that real quick. By default in the start file, there are no design options included. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click create a few. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create a few. Design options in Revit, to create them, there's an option on the bottom of the window to go into the design options dialog. We'll go ahead and select that. By default, main model is the option that you have when you have no design options. So we just need to make a new option set. Once we click new option set, it does create a new option set as it says, and we can create a few sub options. So I'll leave these as the default naming for now, and we'll do 4 options. Now that we have our options created, we want to load generative design options within these design options. Right now, the curtain wall is in our main model. We're going to go ahead and leave it here, and we'll see why in a second. But let's go ahead and open up the Explore Outcomes dialog to create these changes in Revit. So at this time, we have an option selected that we like, and we haven't made any changes to Revit yet. This Create Revit Elements button is a little bit special because it will open all those gate nodes from earlier to let us make changes to the current Revit model. Remember, we do have this curtain wall selected within our Generative Design graph, and that's important to note because every element in Revit does have an element ID. So if we go to Manage and we do IDs of selection, this is important because if we were to copy this wall several times to try to do options, we couldn't because it is connected to that element ID. So what we can do is we can go ahead and click on Create Revit Elements to make the change to the Revit model. With that change made, we will see that we have 175 curtain panels within Revit. What's great about this workflow is it is using the curtain wall and the panels within it to create fabrication level panels that are fully schedulable, real Revit elements, and it's just really awesome to have that interaction. These are real Revit elements, so in the case of changing out these panels types or colors or anything like that, you can definitely do that after you've created them with Generative Design. So that's one really great thing with this workflow that we're really excited about. With this change made, we want to include this as option 1, let's say. So the easiest way to do this would be to hit Control C on your keyboard for copy. You can also go to the Modify tab and click on the copy icon, copy to clipboard. We're going to go ahead and hit undo. So Dynamo or Generative Design in Revit does have a undo available to us. We'll hit undo to undo those changes. We'll go to option 1. We'll go to modify, and we're actually going to go ahead and do paste, align to same place. So you will get a slight warning, and that's because we have a wall outside of the design option, but this does let us store that change that we had already made in that other design option. So that's really nice because we are able to save those changes. So we do now have that saved in option 1. So let's go ahead and pick another option to load into one of the other design options. I'm going to go ahead and select the curtain wall and hit HI on my keyboard for isolate. That way I know which one I'm working with. In order to see more options, I'm going to go ahead and clear out this total number filter, and we're going to place some that are slightly bigger this time, so that way it runs a little bit faster. So we'll go ahead and do Create Revit Elements and let it create this option for us. Awesome. And once that option's created, you will see that it created a distinct new option with the bigger panels. This time I'm going to go ahead and hit Control C on my keyboard. In order to reset this isolate, we can hit HR on our keyboard. These options are available in the little glasses on the bottom of our screen as well. And we're going to undo that last change, that Dynamo change. We'll activate option 2, and we'll go once again to modify, paste, align to same place. We'll still get this warning, and that's because it's still curious what's going on with these changes we're making. So we now have option 1 and option 2. Our main model still has the overall curtain wall that hasn't been modified quite yet. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll isolate it once again, and we'll generate one more option here for us to be able to preview. Once again, I'll pick one that's fairly large, so that way it runs faster. We'll hit Create Revit Elements. Once that's complete, we will see a new option created. Next, I'll select the curtain wall that we just modified. I'll do Control C on my keyboard. We'll undo this Dynamo graph run for the Generative Design creation. We'll hit HR to reset this isolate, and we'll navigate to option 3, go to the Modify tab, paste, align to same place. Once again, we will get that warning. In order to just finish this out, I'm going to remove option 4. So we'll hit Finish Editing. I'll delete option 4. And we are in the main model. I no longer need this default curtain wall, so I'll go ahead and delete it. And now we have the option to navigate from option 1, option 2, and option 3. So it does take a little bit of work to use the design options. Once again, you don't even have to use design options if you don't want to. That is a completely optional step in this workflow. You could run this workflow on a curtain wall and copy it after it runs and move it over to the side, or you can just run it once and just hit undo each time to preview them. So that's what's really great about this workflow is we can adapt it to our needs. If I had a case to where I needed several options to show somebody, so I'm the Revit person on a project or something and I'm creating these options, saving them as design options is really nice. Also showing people this preview within Generative Design is great as well because it does give you that data that's available to us. In Generative Design, we are also able to export the outcomes now. So in a later blog post, we will show how to use this data within other visualization tools so that way you can present your ideas in a more effective way. So there it is. We have a generative design workflow to create staggered curtain systems really quickly within Revit and also pack them into design options. So try that graph out. These sample files are in Revit 2022 and they include everything to get you started.